All right, my name is Bil Corry, and I'm from Chicago, and I'm going to be moving to San Francisco when I return in October. So for those of you in that area, I look forward to connecting with you. Today I'm going to be talking about secure coding. It's a presentation that actually comes from OWASP, owasp.org. It's part of their education project. And this presentation highlights a document they have, which is the guide to creating secure web applications. And this guide is free, and you can download it from their site. And I've added, so this presentation came from them, and then I've added some things and changed some things. So at the very bottom, they originally didn't have a link to where to get the guide, which I thought was odd. But so that's the link, and the presentation should be on that site that Fletcher provided earlier today. So the guide, it's 300 and some odd pages. It's completely free, and it goes into a lot of detail that I'm only going to skim over in this presentation. It was produced by a variety of security experts, and it's really well done. So I recommend you download it and print it out and read it. So today we're going to start off by validating user input. My presentation from the last LDC last year, we covered some of what we're going to cover today, but just like then, I'm going to be highlighting validating user input. That's because user input is responsible for most of the vulnerabilities that are going to exist in your web application, not properly encoding the input that comes from the user and not properly validating it. And you can see up there I've added my golden rule of client input, which is treat all client input as hostile until you've proven otherwise or you've sanitized it. And really, the interesting thing about this is you think, well, you know, I'm an administrator. I don't really need to, in the administration portion of the device, I don't really need to worry too much. But the thing is there's two specific attacks that use you against yourself, which is clickjacking and cross-site request forgeries, CSR. And what happens with those attacks is an attacker is able to trick your browser into issuing GET requests to your web server as you, using your authentication. So basically, you can't be trusted. Oh, as I go through my presentation, if you have questions or you want me to elaborate on something, just feel free to hop in. All right. So user input, you want to take a layered approach. And the first layer is an integrity check. That's when you have data that you starts out on your web server and it passes to an untrusted boundary and comes back, such as hidden input fields, or when you send data a round trip through a payment gateway. Whenever that data comes back in, since a third party has had it, you don't know what they've done with it. So you have to just always double check that it still is valid. And some of the ways to do that is using encryption or HMAC encryption, or using a checksum. And so trusted boundary and untrusted boundary, essentially the difference there is a trusted boundary is a system that you control, and an untrusted boundary is pretty much anything else. So if you don't control it, you should assume that, because you don't know how they've coded their application or how that data is coming back to you, so you always have to double check that it's what you think it is. All right, validation. Validation includes sanitization, and the difference there is with validation, you get something you expect to be a number, and you validate that it's actually a number. So you check to see it only contains the digits 0 through 9. Sanitization is where you say, well, I don't know if it's a number or not, but what I'll do is I'll just cast it explicitly to an integer or a decimal, and then I know it's explicitly an integer or a decimal. So business rules, they vary by application, and they can vary obviously between companies, but even applications within the same company can vary. You're looking at things like you have a business rule that only managers can approve purchase orders. So in your application, you have to then validate that this person is something known as a manager, and this purchase order then was agreed to by this particular manager. And the trick to that is you want to document all these business rules because they're hard to test for. And without proper documentation, you're not going to be able to test for it. And where you really get into sticky situations are the edge cases, things where this person's a manager, but they're also, I don't know, they manage the travel for the company also. And so you have to always double check that all your assumptions are correct. And I have three examples up there where some companies got into trouble because their business rules were not properly enforced. The first one's an interesting one, a couple of trading platforms where you can trade stocks. They have the sign-up process, right? You sign up for an account, and they make a small deposit into your checking account, maybe 20 cents or 30 cents. And then on their site, they'll ask you, okay, how much money did we deposit into your account? Well, someone figured out that if they have a couple of bank accounts, and they have, well, you know, like 30, 50,000 users that have those same bank accounts, they can get those micro deposits out pretty quick. And in the case of this, those companies lost $50,000 to this one guy who made a lot of money just opening up bogus accounts. So the business rule there that they didn't enforce, obviously, was, you know, when you have a bank account, obviously thousands of users shouldn't have the same exact bank account. Maybe a husband and wife, so maybe 2, maybe 5, but obviously not thousands. QVC had a process where you could, you know, QVC's a online or it's a TV retailer. You know, you call them up and you'll see the stuff on TV, and there's some woman showing joy. And they had it where through their website that if you canceled your order right away, there was a mistake where shipping still got the order and sent it out. So this woman figured this out, and so what she would do is order product, sell it on eBay, and she'd cancel her order right away. And so they lost more than $412,000 because they didn't double check that, you know, was the order actually still valid or did it get canceled? And then the last one is an interesting one. It's eBay. There was a guy who would buy computers. You know, he'd buy a computer on eBay. He'd get it. He'd take all the components out of it. You know, the processor and the hard drive and the RAM, and then he'd send it back and say it was destroyed in shipping. So. And by doing that, he was able to bypass a whole bunch of business policies for eBay, PayPal, and UPS. So the seller then would end up with this destroyed computer, but none of those companies would help them because it fell within their accepted guidelines. So definitely always think of those edge cases.